Hello, everyone. It's Adam Caplan here for Inside the Birds. We've got a new feature here for the draft only. We're going to do a sort of an addendum to our mock draft, which Jeff Mosher and I did with Andrew DeCecco, who's our beat reporter for the Eagles. So Andrew knows the league pretty well, as Jeff and I do, and we did a mock draft. Uh, the first part, 1 through 16, was posted on Monday. Part 2 is today. That's pick 17 through 32. 1 through 16 was on Monday, and today's show will serve as an addendum to picks 1 through 16, just as some additional thoughts and information, some background, and some interesting things that you probably didn't know, some nuggets for you. And then I'll do the same thing for picks 17 through 32 later today on Tuesday. So bottom line is it's going to be a great week. We can't wait to provide more information for you. And one of the cool things that we did with Greg Cosell this year is we did not only every position, but we took it further. We did called the Intel with Greg Cosell, which you can get on any platform, YouTube or on any podcasting platform. We didn't just do positional previews, which we typically do. We did organizational philosophy, how the trends in the league. We took a little bit further. We added more discussions on people we talked to around the league, Greg, Jeff, and I, with personnel people, coaches, and what Greg has really learned over the years, how he's kind of adjusted his thinking, how he's when he's kind of missed on players, he's kind of learned through coaches what he didn't see, or what he could have seen, or what he'll do better in. It was great. We learned a lot from Greg through this, so we really encourage that. Also, we want to mention on our Patreon platform, former Eagles quarterbacks coach John DeFilippo will be with us. Patreon.com/InsideTheBirds to sign up. And John will be with us. He's going to walk us through and take us through his experience getting ready for the draft as a quarterbacks coach, which he did, obviously, for the Eagles for 2 years, and also as an offensive coordinator for 3 teams. So it'll go back when he was Jamarcus Russell's coach. You might remember that draft many, many years ago. And John will walk us through and take us through his eyes and his memory, how you prepare for it every step of the way, whether it's the combine, Senior Bowl, All-Star games, interview process, private workouts, pre-draft visits, all sorts of stuff. Can't wait to talk to John about that. We're also going to have, this is really cool, John's former teammate at James Madison for a year, Samir Suleiman, who used to do the contracts for the Panthers. Samir was actually a receiver at James Madison. So he's going to take us through cash versus cap. He's going to talk about his time with the Rams, by the way, where he worked with Mike Martz and a number of coaches. He saw the greatest show on turf up close and all those great players. And he was with Bryce Young for a year. But we're going to talk about contract structure. I want him to talk about how the Eagles do things. We're going to walk through and go through a lot of things that he saw. And also, Jeff Mosher and I will be together on Wednesday. Well, that'll be our last live stream of the week. At least that we're planning. You never know; we might surprise people. But that's our last one planned. That's when we lay out a lot of really high level information for folks who want the Eagles information. So we'll do that. But let's get started with some additional thoughts and information on the Titans here. So everybody knows they're going to go with Cam Ward. I've been talking about this since January, and let me just kind of explain my thought process here on Cam Ward and why I've been so bullish on it. And this is no offense to Will Levis, who's, by the way, very talented. I know he's been disappointing. There's no question about it. He was drafted by another general manager, but Cam Ward is not only the best quarterback in this class, it's kind of like a one-tier quarterback. It's him and everybody else. I mean, I know of a team that does not have another first-round grade on the quarterback. And this team does not need a quarterback, but they told me they had a 1 on Ward, and they don't have a 1 on any other quarterback. I mean, I can understand that. This is I warned people on and anywhere I was talking, whether it's here on Inside the Birds or Sports Grid with Scott Farrell and all the shows I do for them on Fox Sports Radio or on Sirius XM, that this is not a good quarterbacks class. I've been talking about this since December. It's actually worse than I thought. But as always happens, teams miss on quarterbacks. They may not like a lot of these quarterbacks, but someone's going to surprise down the road with great coaching. It might take 3 or 4 years. So whether it's Shedeur Sanders, I think it's probably going to wind up being better than people think. I know people around the league don't think he's special in any way, but he's obviously son of a player, a good college quarterback, pretty sharp guy, good processor. Maybe he's not the great athlete that you're looking for today's quarterback, but the guy's a good quarterback. But bottom line is Cam Ward getting back to him. He's got the arm strength, the commitment. Uh, Pretty tough-minded kid. Talked to people who've done a lot of work on him. Um, Pretty good leader. He could do it all. Moves well enough, runs well enough. And see, the thing about the Titans is, and look, we could say all we want about how their offensive line had been left in shambles over the last couple of years, but you know what? Let's look at it, okay? Before we move on, they signed Kevin Zeitler, who's going to be just a stopgap at right guard. He'll be fine for that. Dan Moore. Now, I know people are up at Titan fans were thought that they were crazy paying him over 20 million a year. Folks, they could get out. They could get out. Looking at the structure that was sent to me, it's definitely a 4-year deal, but it's got a 2-year structure. A ton of money in the first 2 years, but if he doesn't play well through 2 years, they can move on after 2 years. But no, they think he's going to be there for a long time. They missed on the former general manager missed on Andre Dillard badly. That's why they got out of that deal after a year based on structure. But their plan at left tackle last year was Joe Alt. I'm told they absolutely by a high-level team source. I put this out last year on television. This is what they were going to go for, and they got thwarted by the Chargers. Now, Latham, there's a couple of line coaches I talked to around the league think he could be a Pro Bowl left tackle, that he was out of place at left tackle. They knew this, and that's why they brought in Dan Moore. I give the Titans credit. They stepped up. The Chiefs were among a bunch of teams in on that, on the pursuit of him. So I give them credit for doing that. And I really believe that this offensive line has a chance. I didn't say it will be great or good, but it's got a chance over time to be pretty good. With Skronsky firmly entrenched at left tackle. We mentioned Dan Moore. He's got to play to the contract that they gave him. Cushenberry's really good. He got hurt last year. Zeitler, it will be a stopgap at least for 1 year. And Latham is much better off at right tackle. Now, let me just say one thing before we move on to the Browns here. This front office, if these guys could learn to work together, because a lot of these guys don't know each other very well. Some do, some don't. Mike Berganzi, who's a very sharp guy. I've talked to people with the Chiefs about him over the years. Is their general manager, Chad Brinker, who's a former player. Heck, I've been around so long, I remember covering him at Ohio U for the draft many years ago. He won a lot of games as an executive with the Packers. Dave Ziegler has won a lot of games. He's got some rings. With his time with the Patriots, didn't go over well with the Raiders, but there's a whole nother story. Scott Cohn, director of football strategy. Scott won a lot of games with the Eagles and the Ravens. Reggie McKenzie, obviously, he's been around the league a long time as a player and as a football person, as a general manager. He's a VP and a football advisor for the front office. Reggie drafted Derek Carr. He drafted Khalil Mack. I know it didn't end well for him, but he had some good drafts for the Raiders. Last couple weren't great, but he had a couple good drafts. So this front office is loaded with guys who've won a lot, and this is a situation to watch. This thing has a chance to get turned around. I know the roster's really bad. I've talked about this here, and when I was doing my first two audio and video mock drafts, the roster that they took over was awful. They're building the line. They just don't have any playmakers, or very few playmakers on defense. The defense, they just need help. They need pass rushers in the worst way. The defensive front could be good with Sebastian Joseph Day, and T'Vondre Sweat and Simmons and others. When I look at this situation, I think over time, if people are patient, it's a 2 or 3 year dig out here. Okay, I get that, but at least they're on the right path. They didn't go crazy in free agency like Rand Carthon did, who they spent the most free agent dollars in the history of their franchise. It didn't work. It wasn't going to work. You winning the free agency game means nothing. You got to build the right way. Now, L'Jarius Sneed got hurt. I get that. It just a lot of things didn't work out last year. But Draymond Jones, by the way, before I move on, it did not work at all the way that he was being used in Seattle. He's not an edge rusher. He's an interior defensive lineman and to get up the field. They got to figure out a way. Look, their front between Joseph Day Sweat looks like he's got a chance to be a player. Simmons, who's a stud, and Jones. Yeah, as far as D tackles, they're going to have a great rotation, but they need big time edge rushers. And as the draft goes along, they've got to do that. All right, let's move on to Cleveland. So it's got to be Travis Hunter. And I just love Andrew Berry, who's usually tight-lipped. I love him going on the record. I was there at the combine, so my kind of mouth dropped when he was asked about where does he see Hunter, and he said receiver. I didn't think he'd give it up, but he gave it up, and then he doubled down last week. Though he said, "Look, we haven't drafted him yet. He didn't guarantee they're going to draft him, but they're going to draft him." You're talking about an elite talent. This is a draft, folks. Depending on which team you talk about, yes, there'll be 32 picks made in the first round, but I've gotten any number of no more than 14 first round grades from any team that I've spoken with. I've got a team that's got as little as 10. This is not a good first round, though it's deeper in rounds 2 through 3. But Travis Hunter is a stud, elite talent in any draft. So look at it this way. They get Travis Hunter. Let's say they play him at receiver, right? Well, let's just kind of look at this before we move on. Because and the Browns fans have suffered enough. They need a stud talent. When you look at Cleveland's situation at wide receiver for the future, because the draft is always about the future, they secured Jerry Jeudy. He's a good inside receiver. Senator Tillman, before he got hurt, he looked pretty good. He started to come on a little bit. They still need help at receiver. Hunter will help them. Now, the question that they have to answer is, and this is always explained to me, you got to play the guy eventually at just one position or majority at one position. You can't have him going back and forth each week. Coaches and coordinators have to know who they're going to have each week. Where's Hunter going to line up? Now, for the future at cornerback, watch Denzel Ward here. Okay, he turns 28 next week. Not that that's old, but he's had a big injury history. He's never played a full season over 7 years of play. The guaranteed money in his contract expires after the season. He's got a $2.5 million roster bonus, I'm told, that's due on the 5th year of free agency next year. Just watch this situation at cornerback. And good for Andrew Berry to admit his mistake not bringing back Flacco. That was his mistake. Joe wanted to go back. I could tell you at the combine last year, I was going to report because it was true at the time that they had indicated to him that they wanted him back, and then they did a 180. There's some coaches around the league think that they got cold feet because they thought Deshaun Watson would have a problem with it because of how well Joe did. I think it's a little speculative on these coaches, but they would know, the coaches I spoke with who had a connection to some of the Browns coaches. I'll leave it at that. I find it interesting, by the way, that they traded for Kenny Pickett. I could tell you that there was no way in hell the Eagles were giving up on Tanner McKee was going to be their number 2 quarterback. There are people around the league that believe Tanner McKee could be a starter somewhere at the expiration. He's on the year 3 of his 4-year rookie deal. At the end of his rookie deal, I know he was a 6th-round pick, but this kid moves better than you think. He's got a rocket arm, and he's a guy that the Eagles kind of lucked into because I don't think they quite know what they were getting. He turned out to be way better than they thought. But the Browns took Pickett instead of McKee because I just don't think, in fact, I know there's no way the Eagles were going to trade them McKee unless it was a big haul. So just keep an eye on this. I like the Hunter pick. I think it's phenomenal. Hunter, no offense to Abdul Carter. Hunter is the best player overall for this draft, by the way. And that's what folks should understand. That's why the Browns have to go for him here. That is Travis Hunter. Now 3, the Giants here, they have to go with Abdul Carter. This is not really a mock draft. What I'm doing here is just giving you some background and some additional thoughts on that I've got from people around the league and everything that I've known. Shedeur Sanders, again, I don't see any way he doesn't go in the first round, considering this is a bad quarterback draft overall. But yet, when I say that, teams are going to be starved for quarterbacks. He's not a bad quarterback. He's an above average to good quarterback. This quarterback starved league. There are not enough good ones. And the other word for next year's potential class, yeah, better than this year overall, but not great. You have to obviously see who leaves. But why? No, I know some people are like, well, why would they go with Abdul Carter when Thibodeau's 5th-year option? And they would think fans think that they'll pick it up. No, that's not the case. Yes, they have Thibodeau. He's been better than average to good sometimes, but he's not been the player probably they thought they were drafting. Here's what I was told about Thibodeau. You love the length, you love the motor, but he's got some lower body stiffness. He's not as explosive as, ironically, Abdul Carter. Carter's got much more upside. He's not as maybe strong physically, but Carter's got better talent. And by the way, Thibodeau's fifth-year option is due next Thursday by the end of the day on May 1st. So to me here, if they go with Carter, you just cannot. There's no reason to pick up Thibodeau's option because, by the way, the fifth-year options in the 2020 CBA went from being guaranteed for injury only to being fully guaranteed. And by the way, Bill Polian told me, the former Colts GM, who obviously is a Hall of Famer, who I work with at ESPN. I never forget when Bill told me, because I had the same conversation about drafting redundancy. He goes, "Listen, you never worry about that. If the guy's an upgrade, you make the pick. You don't worry about what anyone else thinks." And I agree with Bill. I think this is the smart move here for going with Abdul Carter. Okay, this is a fascinating situation with the Patriots here at number 4, right? So Will Campbell is the best player on the board here, okay? If it goes the way I think it's going to go. Now, two offensive line coaches I spoke to recently told me they see him as a guard. I'm like, why? Guy's tall. The problem is the arm length. Depending on who's measuring his arms, they're less than 33 inches. It's almost unheard of to have less than 33-inch arm length at left tackle in the National Football League. You might be able to get away with it in college football, not at the next level. The other thing is here, look, as one of the guys said to me, remember Zach Martin? Zach Martin was a left tackle in college, got moved to guard with the Cowboys, and he's probably will go to the Hall of Fame. Tons of Pro Bowls. Now, the knock on this decision would be then how in the world do you take a guard at number 4? That's a good question. Look, Owenu is the right tackle, left tackle they don't have. I think it's a discussion. Will Campbell's the best player on the board. There's no question about it for me. This is not a good draft. Again, I think you got to suck it up and go with Will Campbell, who's the best player here. And you got to make a decision how you're going to make this work. I get it. He doesn't have the great arm length. This is a problem for some people. But from the tape is terrific. Really, it's just a really good football player who's got first-round grades from every team that I could think of. So just watch the situation, though. It's a fascinating decision. Now, let's go to the Jaguars at number 5. Is defensive tackle really need? No. But remember, the draft is about the future. Devon Hamilton's contract is up after 2026. Drafted a couple regimes ago. Arik Armstead, remember he was signed by Trent Baalke. This is the last year of Armstead's guaranteed money. See, the other problem here is I know some Jaguar fans want them to draft an edge rusher. There's not an edge rusher you're going to draft here. That's just the bottom line here. You're just not. There's no way Carter's making it. I'm looking at it. We're in no man's land here. I know offensive line, you're not taking a guard here. The best player here is Mason Graham, who is a 3 technique. And you know what, folks? I've come around here with. I honestly sometimes interior pass rushers, 3 techniques like Mason Graham have more value sometimes than edge rushers. Why? Because anytime you could collapse the pocket in the middle and get to a quarterback's feet and make him uncomfortable, where he can't step into throws, that's got tremendous value. And Mason Graham makes a lot of sense to me. Again, there's just no one else here. Let's go to the Raiders at number 6 here, just to understand what's coming here with the Raiders. Look, I know, like everyone and their mother thinks it should be Ashton Genty, and it makes sense because of Pete Carroll being the head coach. And Pete was the one who killed Russ Cook in 2020 when Russell Wilson had 20 passing touchdowns in 8 games. It was his decision over Brott Schottenheimer's best wishes to stop being a throwing team. Schotty came in super aggressive and super analytical, and they were unbelievably aggressive, and Russell Wilson never played better. Their defense was not competitive, and Pete Carroll had enough, and they became a running team, and it didn't work. Teams also play them differently. But you fast forward now, Pete Carroll's a good coach. I mean, I've had my criticism of him, but the guy wins, Super Bowl winner. I don't think he handled himself real well as a head coach at the end there. I just think he kind of lost his way and he needed a change of scenery. This is his last hurrah, but he's going to settle everything down there. And John Spytek is a smart guy. What their new GM, I find it fascinating that he's been so out in front at the running back position. This is a smokescreen. I'd be surprised. Is he trying to get someone to trade up? Maybe, maybe, maybe. I just think it's crazy that he's so out in front at the running back position. You never know. It could be a ruse. Listen, they got the Geno Smith extension, so they don't need to go for a quarterback here. To me, it's got to be Ted McMillan or Genty. Let's go to 7 for the Jets here. If somehow Will Campbell drops here, it's Will Campbell all day long. I know they need another receiver opposite Garrett Wilson. Assuming Garrett Wilson's going to be here for a long time. It's not that Garrett Wilson was not going to be here for next year. He'll be here next year. They exercise 5th-year option, but does he want to be there long term? That's the question. We'll find out eventually. That's just an interesting situation to kind of track here because unfortunately things have not gone well for the Jets during his time there. They have not been as good as a lot of people thought, but he's a stud talent. Now, Tyler Warren, if Campbell goes like I expect, is the best player on the board at a position of need for the future and for now, by the way. Now, the argument against it is that tight end is not a value position. That's just the way it is. I get that part of it. But one thing the Jets have not done is not build a quality offensive line. They've kind of patchworked it, good at some parts, not so good at the other. But there are no other offensive linemen you would take. If Will Campbell does not go here, if he's off the board like I expect, you look at Ted McMillan if he drops. But Tyler Warren's the best player available, and I know people are going to bring up Brady, the Kyle Brady, he had 1995 draft, and there's great videos that you could see. I was actually watching that on NFL Network the other day. Hilarious. It's caught in a draft. Actually taped it. If you guys could get it, it's phenomenal. See those poor Jet fans start crying and yelling and screaming when they drafted Kyle Brady and didn't get Warren Sapp. Oh well, I hate to bring that up. Let's go to 8 in the Panthers. Look, the Panthers roster is not as bad as people think. Well, part of the problems were obvious. Is Bryce Young didn't play well until late last season. The Panthers now they need edge rushers. They need as many as they can get out of this draft. I get that people are all over their defensive coordinator last year. I get that part, but that wasn't really his fault. When you look at Ejiro Vero's issue last year, he just didn't have enough talent to work with. And now, when you really look at it, if Dan Morgan could get his way here, it'll be his call. If the right guy's there, like Micah Williams or Jalen Walker, you go with one of them. They start right away. And by the way, you play Walker at edge. That's just you figure it out how to make it work, and you get that edge rusher. It's real simple. They need corner. I get that. I don't see a corner, quite frankly, on my value board here. I'm looking at it. I just don't see it. I don't see Barron going that early. That's too early. Will Johnson, he's a zone corner only. Yeah, and they'll play a lot of zone. I get that. It's a little bit early for him. Panthers go for that edge rusher, no question about. 9 with the Saints. They take whoever's available of the edge rushers from Georgia. If it's Micah Williams, if he's the one who's available, you take him. You get explosive player. This guy's a big-time winner, big-time player. Secure it. Get that rotation going. Yeah, they need a quarterback. Shedeur Sanders is just – you got to be wowed by a quarterback to take them at 8. He's not a wow player. That's just the way it is. He's a nice college quarterback. He's just not a value here. Not going to 10. The key here for the Bears is they got to get the right information on Mike Green. Mike Green is the best edge rusher available based on when I say based on who's left. Looking at the way I think it's going to go, if they feel comfortable with what they get. I know they paid Dio Dingbo. They don't have enough edge rushers. You can never have enough guys. I get the best edge rusher. They need another receiver, but they don't need to take one now. Although if McMillan dropped there, that's got to be a conversation. Remember, Ben Johnson will run plenty of 11 personnel. He could run plenty of 12. I know a lot of people want Genty. Looking at DeAndre Swift's contract, let me just kind of let me see if I have it, my file here. Uh, DeAndre Swift is, I think if you've got your druthers, he's in a two system a la like Ben Johnson had in Detroit, and you pair him up with a power back. I know that's why that people are saying that. Now, DeAndre Swift's contract, he had a 3-year contract, but a 2-year structure. That means his first year was fully guaranteed at 8.5 million total cash. Second year cash is 8 million. About 80% of it's fully guaranteed. So he's going to have to play a lot. There's no guaranteed money in year 4. Year 3, by the way, where the total cash is 7.5 million. If Genty's there, you're taking him. He's the best player available. Marion Hampton, folks, he's going in the first round. He's actually more explosive than Genty, but there are questions whether he can be a bell cow. And that's the reason why he's going to drop a little bit. Uh, but I would not look, I would have no problem if they took Hampton. This might be a little bit rich for people, but I don't think so. But overall, you go with the best player available. Will Johnson, by the way, will be very, very interesting here for the Bears here. Uh, I because of the it was what happened, last year with Stevenson in the corner, the lack of discipline. I know some people are down on him. Dennis Allen will play a good combination of man and zone coverage. Would not surprise me if they went with Will Johnson. This is where the conversation starts for Will Johnson. Let's go to number 11 with the Niners. They're the only team right now cannot line up at defensive tackle. They've got four backups, quite frankly. They're in dire straits there. They could use a corner, but they don't need to take one. They could use another edge. Uh, I go here with Walter Nolan or Kenneth Grant. Walter Nolan's more of a 3 technique, would be great in that wide 9 that they run. Either or, you take either or player. And I know this much about John Lynch. When I sat in his office a number of years ago, he has this saying that Kyle Shanahan and John have. You can't solve every issue in one offseason. Yes, D tackle is a major need. They need as many as they can get. They could use a minimum of 2, maybe 3. But you also don't want to reach for any. But Kenneth Grant, to me, now he's probably going to go a little bit later because he's more of a nose tackle. I take Walter Nolan here if he passes their security stuff, if they're comfortable with the off the field stuff. You take him here. It's nothing criminal, nothing like that. It's more maturity, take care of personal business. I'm told by multiple NFL sources. I know I've talked to teams who've talked to him. He's interviewed really well. So let's see what happens here. But I love this pick here. If it comes down to it, Walter Nolan would be great in that wide 9 with Chris Kusarek, and then of course Robert Saleh back as their defensive coordinator. Dallas Cowboys here. They have a number of needs. They have offensive line needs, obviously. Now, by the way, running back here, Miles Sanders and Williams, by the way, Devontae Williams, combined on their 1-year deals. They're making less than $4.2 million. They don't have a future at running back. I look at Marion Hampton here big time. Absolutely. We're assuming Genty goes earlier. I'm looking at edge rusher here. They lost to Marcus Lawrence. I'm looking at Tet McMillan here. I'd be happy with any of those players here for the Cowboys at 13. It's about time that Chris Greer, if Membo's there, take him. Turn that card in 30 seconds. Chris Greer has never built a quality offensive line, and he's got to do that. Membo would be a great pick here. He might go earlier. He's certainly in the conversation here. He should be the best player available. 14, Chris Ballard. This is just talk about futility at tight end. It just hasn't worked. He's tried everything. If you really look at the best tight end that he had since he's been there is Jack Doyle. Was Jack Doyle, and I look at this group here, and Jack Doyle, by the way, was claimed off waivers from Tennessee. He didn't sign him as an undrafted free agent. If you look at their tight end group here for this football team, it's just a bunch of average players. Jelani Woods has been hurt his entire career. Mo Alley Cox is a wide tight end only. Will Mallory's got some upside to be a number 2 tight end. Albert Okwuegbunam was a former second-round pick who's never really made it, who's been hurt a lot. So when you look at this situation, to me, it's Tyler Warren here. It's either Tyler Warren or Loveland. Um, I, it's just get it right. Take the best player available. Oh, I'm sorry, Alberto was Okwuegbunam was a fourth round pick for Denver, not a second round pick in 2020. But to me, you just take the best player available, and it's Warren or Loveland. If Warren's gone, you take Loveland. Loveland's going in the first round. I'm told on the labrum situation or the injury, it's a labrum. Multiple teams I talked to said they have no problem with it. They expect him to be healed and ready to go by training camp. It's his right shoulder. Not a big deal. And then a former coach on one of the staffs over the years told me that Chris Ballard, if they're going to go with offensive line, once guys are super physical, he's not that he doesn't like athletic players, but he'd rather get more physical offensive linemen. So just keep that in mind, Colt fans, if you're listening, as you watch this draft unfold. Let's go to 15. The Falcons. It's all defense here. Edge rush, edge rush, edge rush. Now I'm going to give you kind of an interesting nugget here. Multiple offensive line coaches told me Gray Zabel, who will go in the first round. I'm not saying that he's going to go 15 here to the Falcons. They lost Drew Dahlman, their center, but two guys tell me that although he's 6'6", they would actually move him into center. Now, whether Terry Fontenot, the general manager, would think about doing that here, I don't know, but just something to think about. He could play left tackle, play right tackle, he could play center. There are a couple coaches who told me they don't really. Obviously, the Falcons don't need a left tackle or right tackle; they're set there. And Bergeron and Lindstrom are their guards, but I just thought it was interesting that when you look at this kid, Gray Zabel, these offensive line coaches actually mentioned two guys did. Not that you're going to take a center there at 15, but if their board gets blown up and they don't like what's there, it's just something to think about. But to me, it's edge rush, edge rush, edge rush. As James Pierce passes the character test, if they're comfortable with him, they take him. He's the best player on the board by far. It's not even close. It's not even debatable. He's the best player. This is where you want to trade down if you don't like what's there. The Falcons also have to look at corner here. Opposite AJ Terrell, Mike Hughes would be a good backup. He's not really a starting quality corner. They got to get a corner that somehow could start. Will Johnson would be a fine pick for them here. They need corners. I mean, they need outside corners, no doubt about it. And then finally here with the Cardinals, I get it. They've got enough edge rushers. That's not the problem. They need playmakers, folks. The Cardinals just lack playmakers. John Gannon's gotten a lot out of this defense. They've rebuilt their defensive line, which was they were really bad at tackle last year. Now they had Calais Campbell at the twilight of his career. Dalvin Tomlinson, who was cut by the Browns. Darius Robinson barely played last year due to the calf injury. Justin Jones, Bilal and Nichols. They're going to have a great D tackle rotation. Baron Browning, Josh Sweat, B.J. Ojolari. Hopefully, Zaven Collins gives more of an edge rush. But the thing is, they need more upside, more edge rush. Corner, though, is more of a need to me. Max Melton should be a full-time starter. They got to figure out the cornerback position. They need depth. They need competition. If I'm Monty Ossenfort, I am drafting the best defensive player. That's not a D tackle. Well, although honestly they need youth, but I want a great defensive player. Now, wide receiver, I think the conversation starts here with Matthew Golden. The Cardinals are not good enough at receiver. Marvin Harrison was a disappointment as a rookie. It's hard to put my finger on why. He needs to get on the same page as Kyler Murray, but he needs help. They got a bunch of backups. Zay Jones is a quality backup. Fehoko is a big guy. He's a backup. George is a backup. Michael Wilson is a backup. They need a receiver. They need juice. This is where the conversation starts with Golden here. I would absolutely look at that. If I am the Cardinals, I'm looking very, very hard at Matthew Golden here. Or Luther Burden. Those are the two I would look at. If you want the speed, go with Golden. Now, I had a receivers coach tell me, although he likes Burden, he doesn't love him. He thinks he needs to sharpen up his route running. When he doesn't have the ball in his hands, where he's explosive, terrific, one of the best in this draft. He needs to do a little bit better without the football in his hands. You don't hear that a lot from receivers coaches. I thought that was very interesting. But he's a very gifted guy. I'm going receiver here, folks, if I'm the Cardinals, or a big-time defensive player. And then actually, uh, let me say one thing about the Bengals, folks, and I'll talk more about them on my next show here. They've got to fix their defense. They were at times not competitive. They need any playmakers. They have to address their offensive line. They got to help Joe Burrow out. This has got to be a draft where they're super aggressive. And if any player drops to them, go get them. All right, that's it for this show. We'll have more nuggets for you in the next show. Thank you so much for watching.